It's 1980s America. Dial-up screeches, neon lights hum, and a teenage boy named Jonathan James sits hunched over a flickering screen. He's not playing Pong or Pac-Man. He's cracking codes, burrowing into the heart of the most powerful machine on Earth, NASA's mainframe. This wasn't just some kid playing with toys. Jonathan was a prodigy, a digital Houdini slipping through the cracks of a system built for grown-ups. He downloaded millions of lines of code, blueprints for spaceships and satellites, secrets whispered in the language of binary. But it wasn't enough. The thrill of the hack, the forbidden knowledge, it became an addiction. He wasn't just a hacker, he was a ghost in the machine, a whisper in the wires. He even infiltrated the Pentagon, stealing classified documents and leaving a trail of digital breadcrumbs. The FBI, those analog bloodhounds, were hot on his trail. They tracked him down, a lanky kid barely out of his teens, his once bright eyes clouded with obsession. He was the first minor convicted of cybercrime in the US and sentenced to 6 months in a juvenile detention center. His story, a cautionary tale of obsession gone awry, is a reminder that even the most brilliant minds can get lost in the digital abyss. So next time you boot up your computer, remember Jonathan James, the boy who dared to touch the stars and ended up burning out like a meteor in the cold vacuum of reality. This ain't your average coffee shop crime story, folks. This is the dark side of the digital age, where genius and recklessness can dance a deadly tango. Buckle up, because we're just getting started. Let's rewind to 1982. Picture Miami, palm trees swaying, synth music pounding, and in a quiet suburb, Robert James, a computer programmer, welcomes his son Jonathan into the world. Now, little Johnny wasn't exactly into building sandcastles. No, his playground was the flickering screen of his dad's work computer. At 6 years old, he was already a digital Houdini, lost in the neon labyrinth of video games, playing through the night like a caffeine-fueled gremlin. This wasn't just a Fortnite addiction, folks. This was before dial-ups and floppy disks, when computers were hulking beasts reserved for government labs, and little Johnny was hacking away like a one-man cyberpunk orchestra. His parents, naturally, weren't thrilled. They saw the dark circles under his eyes, the neglected homework, and the whispers of comrade echoing from his bedroom, not exactly the path to Harvard they envisioned. So, they did what any concerned parent would do. They put parental controls on the PC. Big mistake. For Jonathan, that was like throwing gasoline on a digital campfire. By 13, this digital prodigy had slashed Windows for Linux, mastering coding languages of pros twice his age. But this was the 1990s. The internet was new, and computers were a rarity. For most kids, surfing online meant chasing waves, not feeds. Except child genius Jonathan voraciously devoured every byte and every kernel he could decode. His fixation only grew, his world shrinking as screams drew him deeper down mouse holes. Until late one night, the Jameses returned to a sight that made their blood run cold. Jonathan, with his hands still clawing at a keyboard, dark hollows where once bright eyes lived. They had to stop this addiction, so they did what any desperate parent would do. They confiscated the computer. When the computer vanished from his room, the mastermind fled too. The family was petrified of where he'd run to next. Johnny, the pint-sized cyberpunk, might have been a keyboard bandit by day, but he kept his grades sparkling brighter than a CRT in a power outage, or so he claimed. Little did his folks know, their son wasn't just hacking school servers. He was the digital Kaiser Souza, rewriting his report cards like a master code editor. The summer of 1999 saw a dramatic escalation in his online activities. Targeting critical infrastructure, he'd breached the systems of Bell South Telecommunications, a major US carrier. While gaining unauthorized access was a serious offense, he refrained from data theft or destruction, simply exploring the network and leaving no obvious trace. This raised several questions. Was this a mere reconnaissance mission, or was he simply honing his skills? What motivated his seemingly aimless intrusion? The answer arrived soon enough. Between June and October, Jonathan, under the online alias Comrade, embarked on a targeted campaign against government agencies. The Defense Threat Reduction Agency, tasked with countering biological and chemical weapons, felt his presence first. Then, with chilling nonchalance, he breached NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. Now, it's crucial to understand the significance of Marshall. This wasn't some administrative server. This was the nerve center for rocket engine development, communications infrastructure for the International Space Station, and ultimately, a vital cog in America's space program. However, unlike his previous exploits, Jonathan didn't seem interested in data or manipulation. His actions were more akin to leaving digital breadcrumbs and planting malware that granted him control over 13 additional computers within the system. He targeted a server at the NASA Langley Research Center in Virginia, gaining unauthorized access and stealing $1.7 million worth of data. This included, critically, the source code for software controlling the International Space Station's temperature and humidity systems. The breach forced NASA to shut shut down its network for 21 days, incurring $41,000 in damages due to contractor labor and equipment replacement. This incident triggered a joint investigation by NASA and the FBI. Meanwhile, Jonathan, oblivious to the impending crackdown, continued his activities. He gained access to a server belonging to the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DTRA. Using a remote connection, he installed a sniffer program to capture network traffic, hoping to obtain sensitive information. This resulted in the acquisition of thousands of messages, login credentials, and data from military computers, marking the first known cyber attack against a Pentagon subsidiary. On January 26, 2000, law enforcement officials apprehended Jonathan at his home in Miami, Florida. 4 personal computers, a laptop, and a pocket computer were seized as evidence. He was subsequently tried and pleaded guilty to 2 counts of juvenile delinquency, one for hacking and stealing data from the Department of Defense, and the other for his actions against NASA. Jonathan's age, 16 at the time, presented a unique legal challenge. No minor had ever been convicted of such serious cybercrimes before. Jonathan's initial sentence was 6 months in detention, followed by probation until adulthood. However, this was later reconsidered by the presiding judge, who opted for a more lenient sentence of 6 months of home arrest alongside a computer ban, except for educational purposes. Additionally, he was required to write letters of apology to both NASA and the Department of Defense, as well as cooperate with them in understanding how he breached their systems. Facing trial as an adult could have led to significantly harsher penalties, with legal experts estimating a potential 10-year sentence for computer abuse and wiretapping. Unfortunately, Jonathan violated the terms of his home arrest and was subsequently apprehended. Drug traces were found in his system, leading to a further escalation. He became the first juvenile offender sent to a detention center for cybercrime-related charges, serving his full 6-month sentence at the Alabama Correctional Facility. This case generated significant media attention, serving as a precedent for future prosecutions of minors involved in similar offenses. As prosecuting attorney Guy Lewis stated, "This case should send a clear message to our community that we will aggressively prosecute to the full extent of the law." Following his release, Jonathan largely avoided the spotlight, leading a seemingly ordinary life. He rarely participated in media interviews and appeared to have abandoned his previous hacking activities. According to his father, Jonathan displayed signs of depression and anxiety afterwards, possibly stemming from the legal ordeal and the fear of constant surveillance. At the tender age of 18, he faced the heart-wrenching loss of his mother to breast cancer, leaving him and his brother alone in the world. The subsequent years passed quietly until January of 2007, when the Secret Service launched an investigation into the notorious TJX hack. Millions of unsuspecting customers fell victim as their personal information, including addresses and payment details, was mercilessly extracted. This cyber onslaught was masterminded by the infamous Albert Gonzalez, a 28-year-old who at the time amassed a fortune through his criminal exploits. As investigators delved deeper, a web of co-conspirators emerged, including names like Christopher Scott Damon, Patrick Toy, and Maxian Kremski. Among the accused, an enigmatic figure known only as JJ Raised Eyebrows. JJ, linked to a previous hack in 2004, was suspected to be Jonathan James himself, who vehemently denied any involvement. In a dramatic turn, the police raided Jonathan's home and those of his siblings, but found no concrete evidence tying him to the retail hacks. Instead, a licensed firearm and a haunting suicide note were discovered at his residence. Less than 2 weeks later, a chilling discovery unfolded. Jonathan James was lifeless in the shower, with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to his head. Beside him were the same gun from the raid and a cryptic suicide note that hinted at a conspiracy within the hacking underworld. The redacted words of the note spoke of a desperate attempt to clear his name, suggesting that Albert Gonzalez had been collaborating with federal authorities since 2003. For 5 long years, he orchestrated a web of deceit, manipulating others like Chris to hack credit cards, turning a sinister profit by selling them on the notorious corners of the internet. But the game took a wicked turn when he started having his buyers arrested to appease the feds. When the scheme finally unraveled, James played his last card, offering up Chris to escape with just 1 count of wire fraud. The feds, hungry for a bigger catch, saw James as a prime target. They believed tying him to the case would be a coup, like catching Kevin Mitnick multiplied by 10. Despite James swearing innocence in the notorious TJX breach, the feds played dirty, leaving him ensnared in a web of accusations. As James languished behind bars, he wrote a letter, a desperate attempt to regain control over a situation spiraling out of hand. Locked away for a crime he claimed innocence to, he defiantly declared, "It's not whether you win or lose, it's whether I win or lose. I die free." The ominous tone was underscored by an eerie suicide note from years past, juxtaposed with his gun nearby. In his final moments, James laid out his digital empire's keys, router and VPN passwords, access to his MySpace and PayPal accounts. Yet, even in death, he retained a grip on his legacy conspiracy, signing off with an ominous declaration, "For me, the gates will open. I am the master of this computer." The enigmatic figure known as JJ would later be connected to another alias, Jim Jones, a name associated with Stephen Watt, a co-conspirator convicted for selling a packet sniffer program for Albert Gonzalez, the puppeteer behind this tragic hacking saga. However, Robert James did believe that JJ was his son, but stated that even if he did partake in the Officer Max hack in 2004, he didn't have anything to show for it. Strangely, despite the alleged cyber heist, there was a conspicuous absence of wealth in Jonathan's story, a puzzle that left investigators scratching their heads. Draped in conspiracy, the truth behind Jonathan James's fate remains elusive. So there you have it, folks. The story of Jonathan James, the boy who hacked NASA, a tale of brilliance, recklessness, and a tragic end that still leaves us with questions. Was he a harmless prankster or a cyber terrorist? Was his punishment fair? Did the system fail him? The truth, like all good mysteries, lies somewhere in the shadows. One thing's for sure, Jonathan James's story is a stark reminder of the power and peril of the digital age. It's a cautionary tale for aspiring hackers, a call to action for cybersecurity experts, and a poignant reminder of the fragility of human life. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the dark side of technology, smash that like button and subscribe for more true crime videos. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and stay skeptical. This is Secret Sleuths, signing off.